When I started this channel, I was 14 years old, and I made it as an April Fool's joke. The plan with it was to simply be a meme channel, like secondary channels for other YouTubers. This is actually, in fact, my second channel. My first channel, I just completely stopped uploading on it in December of 2018 because I decided that it had just run its course. The plot that I put behind it was done, and yes, even back then, I still had an issue with putting a plot into just about everything. In fact, the name of this channel, Fish Activation, is a reference to the very first video that I put on my old channel. And I'm going to run that clip again, just so that everyone can cringe at it.
Come on! I'm supposed to jump over the flagpole and activate the fish.
I was 11, and after that Cat Mario Let's Play, I eventually started getting into more edited videos. I even made an early example of what would eventually become Fish Game News. But I eventually ended that channel after about 3 years because, for one thing, I didn't like editing. I still don't, but I do it anyway because it's really not as bad as I remember. Number two, I felt like, as I said, the storyline that I put behind it, where an evil SNES Classic was chasing my tail, I felt like that just ran its course. I ended it. And number three, I thought it was a good idea to have multiple channels for each different season of my YouTube career. Yeah, this channel was supposed to just be a holdover for my next channel, the second season of my regular stuff. And then before the first year this channel was up, I had already gone back to doing the regular stuff on this channel. Isn't that something? And I mean, this channel has lasted far longer than the old one did, and has become far more ambitious. This channel is nearly 6 years old, and I've even done stuff like, say, scripts! I've done scripted videos before! I do like the idea of having a different channel for my more scripted stuff, so I could keep this channel to more topical stuff like Fish Game News, and potentially going back to the memes. But if I was going to do that, I would want to start with remastering my Sonic Frontiers videos, combining them into one thing, and releasing it at the exact same time that I released my Tool cover album over on Underflow. So why am I bringing all this up? Why am I being so sentimental? Well, at the end of the first year of Fish Activation, I uploaded a video called The Top 10 Games of the 2010s. I did it because the next year was 2020. I felt it made sense that at the very end of the 2010s, I would go over the top 10 games of the 2010s, one game for each year. That episode ended up being the moment that I realized that my old computer was crap. It just completely ruined it. All the text was gone for some reason, so I ended up having to redo everything in post. In fact, it wiped off the text from everything on my computer every time I opened up that thing. Like, if I opened that thing up, everything would just go blank. Like, I'd have to restart the entire computer just to do anything else. But I made it. But here's the thing. That was the top 10 games of the 2010s. There's still 4 other decades of gaming that exist, 3 other decades that actually matter. How am I going to cover them?
Well, that's something I figured out all the way back then. I would just take a look at the other decades at the 5-year marks. Same rules as last time, 1 game per year. And also, in case you're wondering, this is not canon to Fish Game News. You can tell because Death Note is right there. And also, Alexa, turn on the fan. I never blew that out. Now, before we begin, we gotta talk about the games that I actually got completely wrong. Like the first 4, the PS3 games, I just chose them because I had just gotten the PS3 and I wanted to talk about it some more. Star Fox 2, what was I even thinking then? I'm pretty sure I just chose that because I was disappointed in Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. They're not bad games, but they're not the perfect games everyone said they were. And then Mario Maker. I don't actually want to change that, but, you know, it's not exactly available anymore. You know, I'm actually just going to keep Mario Maker. But the other 3, 2012 is getting, hold up, Kingdom Hearts 3D. 2013 is getting Drakengard 3, and 2017 is getting Nier Automata. Alright, let's go.
Also, I don't have long to work on this video, so most of the footage is going to be from trailers, cutscenes, and other people's gameplay that I might forget to credit. 2009 must have been a bad year for games. The most overrated video game to ever release got its first demo, and Nintendo decided that the future was in the past. But at the very least, when it came to that, we got Punch-Out from it. It's a boxing game. you against a large cast of increasingly ridiculous fighters. And it's a simple game of call and response, not too mechanically different from the NES games, but it uses those 30 some odd years of extra developments and video game advancements to make it even flashier and more ridiculous. And plus, a very big benefit for me is that it has motion controls. Conker's Bad Fur Day might just be the funniest game ever made. As an absolutely scathing parody of the games that Rare would normally make. Oh, wait. Oh. That was 2001. Okay, The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. It's been a while since I've played it. I remember it being really good. Probably my second favorite Zelda game. I don't have much to say. 2002 was the year that perhaps the most important video game to me was ever made. The first game that I ever played, the game that would set me on the course to become a gamer, and a game whose sequels ended up being some of my favorite games of all time. But who cares about that? Let's talk about Metroid Prime. As someone who doesn't give two flying flips about FPSs, it is amazing just how stellar this game is. Just about everyone before the game thought that it was just going to be a Halo game with a Metroid skin, but no, it is a Metroid game in 3D that just so happens to be in first person. The exploration is top notch. Every facet of the land of Talon is teeming with life. It almost feels like it's a real place, a real alien planet. That said, I do prefer its sequel, but it doesn't rank because another game of its genre ended up being better. And Metroid Prime 3 doesn't rank because that's just a Halo game with a Metroid skin. A GBA game on the top 10 list? Well, yes, because it's Mega Man Zero 2. Pretty much the perfection of the Mega Man formula. And Mega Man is one of my favorite series of all time. I love these games, especially the Zero ones, because, I love slashing things. And plus, this one's incredibly difficult. It's got an interesting story. I don't really know how to really talk about this game, because, it's a GBA game. It's just, just about the perfect GBA game, except for its sequel. But once again, that doesn't rank, because that was 2004. And 2004 had perhaps one of the most important games of all time. One that revolutionized the industry and showed people that yes, games can be so much more than they once were. Cave Story. Yep, I pulled a fast one on you. Ladies and gents, I gave you the birth of the modern indie scene, created by one man over the course of 10 years as a labor of love for retro games and Metroidvanias. And by golly, it is definitely that. Although, to be fair, it is a bit more linear than a standard Metroidvania, and a lot more story-focused. But who cares? It's one of the greatest games of all time, no doubt. I pretty much replay it once every year, really. And I don't really replay games all that often. And for the record, I don't consider the Metroid Prime games to be Metroidvanias. I just wanted the joke to land harder. Alright, let's face it. Any of the Final Fantasy action RPGs are probably going to be the top one in their respective year, except for Type 0. If I bothered to get more than 15 minutes into 15, Persona 5 would have never had a chance. If anything, by ranking it as number 5 for the 2000s, I'm putting it lower than I'd ought to, because the 2020s have been packed with these, and there's gotta be some breathing room somewhere. And yes, I'm using the trailers for the remasters of Metroid Prime and Crisis Core, because I'm pretty sure the only difference is graphics, and in the case of Crisis Core, camera control. And plus, these are the only versions I've actually played. Metal Gear Solid 2 is just one of those games. A legitimately thought-provoking experience that manages to be political without shoehorning in contemporary politics that'll age in about 2 weeks. Something that's really hard to find today, and was especially hard to find back then. Not to mention Kojima's famous eye for detail. This game hasn't aged a day, and in fact, if it was released today, it would still be considered ahead of its time. This is the greatest game to have been released before me. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is easily my favorite Zelda game. It's the most realistic and edgy game in the series, mostly because of the sharper initial reaction of the Wind Waker. But because Nintendo still has their charms, it ended up being less like Lord of the Rings and more like a Tim Burton movie. And I love Tim Burton. And plus, this game has absolutely the greatest dungeons in the series, and a Zelda game lives and dies by its dungeon design. I am looking at you, Breath of the Tears of the Skyrim. Kingdom Hearts 2. The moment that the action RPG was effectually perfected. While the first game may have made me a gamer, the second one sealed the deal. Without this game, I wouldn't be here, probably. This is the game that began expanding the series' story into places that no man could have ever imagined. This is the game that gave Sora the legendary agility that he would become known for in later games. This game, by all accounts, should be number 1. But I'm shallow. I am shallow as a puddle on the side of a desert road, And my favorite game of the 2000s was Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Why? Because it had these cutscenes. I've known it for years. The only reason why Super Smash Bros. Brawl remained my favorite game for 11 years straight was because it had these amazing cutscenes. The game is far slower than Melee and has the stripping mechanic, but it has cutscenes. It was the first game to axe characters from the roster, but it has cutscenes. Everything else about the adventure mode is far more generic and less fan servicey than Melee's, but it has cutscenes. And also, I didn't even play Melee until just a few years ago. You want to know a quick way to win Game of the Year? Well, don't bother with any sort of gameplay or any sort of level design or anything like that. Just show me a Newgrounds Flash animation of Shadow the Hedgehog, Vincent Valentine, and Zero from Dragon Guard 3 locked in a battle to the death while some guy in the background shreds on a guitar. That's how you win.
Alright, so that was my list of the top 10 games of the 2000s, kind of. My ability to do short-form reviews really hasn't improved that much in the last 9 years. So let's just jam these two lists together and get the top 20 games of the 21st century from before the year 2020. Here that is. I don't think that's how you're supposed to say, but whatever. Okay, so I have terrible taste, and I will see you in 2025. Goodbye.